Okay, thanks a lot, Olaf. So Olaf has this theory that you guys are introverts, but I don't really believe it. So I'm going to try it out, okay? So how are you feeling today? Okay, maybe Olaf is right. So let me give you one more chance. How are you feeling today? They are not introverts, see, Olaf? Or at least you fixed it. Okay, guys. So it is a really exciting event this year. Not only we are presenting a lot of new stuff, but we are actually presenting a whole new vision for what Liferay is and for what Liferay is going to become in the next few months and years. And I wanted to start this event by presenting to you that vision that will be actually developed further in during the rest of the event today and tomorrow. So I wanted to start by showing you something that probably many of you have seen this. How many of you have seen the Magic Quadrant of this year? Nice, so probably around 50%. For those that you don't know Gartner, then it's a very famous analyst. And they have these Magic Quadrants where they say whether you are cool or not. If you appear in the quadrant, you're already cool. And if you are a leader, then you feel very proud of yourself, right? So this year, for the first time ever, we've passed Microsoft and Oracle. And we're very proud of that. So proud that I'm showing it to you here, otherwise I wouldn't. But this is not what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about is that Liferay's goal is never to be well positioned there. Obviously, we are very happy to be there, but what we are always thinking is how can we add more value with our product, with our services, with the things we do. With our community. And as part of that, we've been really thinking through probably fired by a lot of things that have been happening in the Liferay community, by new hires that have been putting in doubt things that we were doing in a certain way. And we've been thinking during the whole year, how can Liferay as a product or as a set of products or as a company provide the most value today and in the future, right? And the result of that has been a year of a lot of innovation. I think it's the year I've been working with Liferay since year 2003, and I think this is the year that I see as the most innovative ever. And not only at Liferay, but actually in the community. I think some of you guys have actually been doing amazing stuff with Liferay, things that we never thought or we never anticipated. So what I'm going to show you in this presentation is actually 3 trends that we've been seeing over this year and that we think are going to be increased during the next year or several years that are really, really exciting. So I'm going to start with one thing that nobody misses, right? Which is mobile development. It's really felt for me, I don't know about you guys, but it's really felt for me like a hurricane. It's actually changed so many things in the way development is done. From a variety of reasons, from the technical reasons, from the user experience reason. Someone was telling me yesterday at the conference that users used to come to him to tell him, I want my web app to feel like my desktop app. And he would say, no, that's not possible. In the web, there is these limitations and so on. Today, we look at the desktop app and we say, no, we don't want a web app to look like that. That's no animations, it's so ugly, not at all. And a big part of that has been the web, and we'll talk about that. And another big part of it has been mobile development. So I want you to ask yourself one question. When was the last time you did this? Right? Well, some of you are already doing it right now as I speak. So, as Olaf said, almost everybody has a smartphone, unless you've made an explicit decision not to have it, which is very respectable. But right now, I mean, we use, even us nerds, we probably use our phones much, much more than our beloved MacBook Pros or Intels or Lenovo's or whatever, right? And since we are developers, one key question for us is, how are these apps being built, right? And then think about it. How are these apps being built? I would bet that probably what you guys are thinking about is this. Right? Oh, I use native apps because it's much better user experience. No, I use HTML5 because I'm all about the standards. No. Hybrid. Hybrid is so much better than anything else because I can do it once and it works in all devices. This is not what I'm asking about. What I'm asking about is the other side that is often forgotten. What about the backend, guys? So I was talking earlier this year with Jose Manuel Navarro. You'll meet him here. And he has a long background of developing apps. And he was telling me how so often the backend is really an afterthought. And when they've been discussing whether to use native apps, whether to use HTML5, whether to use hybrid, and then one day someone asked, does anyone know Java or Ruby on Rails or Django? Who's going to do the backend? And someone says, yeah, I know this technology. OK, you do it. So you probably know this, but that doesn't work. OK? So don't let the backend of a mobile app, especially of an enterprise mobile app, be an afterthought. Most apps today are connected to the internet to deliver some sort of functionality, be it a social functionality or empowering or enabling an enterprise business. So if we agree on that, then my opinion is that just like happened with web apps several years ago, developing a mobile app from scratch is rarely a good idea. Is rarely something that is really worth it. Just like portals, one of the main reasons why they came to existence is because there were so many common things among web apps that it was not worth it to develop it all over and over and over. I actually think that for mobile apps, we're in that state right now, where even the people who care about the backend, they develop it very often from scratch. And probably there is not a better option yet. But we believe that actually Liferay is well positioned for this. And one question to show this is, almost all apps, and increasingly, need user management. Do you want to implement that once again? And not only user management, there is so many other features that Liferay provides that actually are very useful. When Jose Manuel joined the company, he said, and he looked at Liferay. He didn't know Liferay before. He's very nice, so we still hired him. So he said, oh, wow, actually, you know what? Many of these features, I've had to implement them in backends for those mobile apps. And they are just developed with Liferay. And he learned, oh, we have web services. Oh, man, if I would have known this, I would have used it, right? So actually, Liferay is really a good backend right now, the way it is right now, to build these mobile apps. But few people know, but actually some of you do know, right? These are just 3 random examples that I picked just searching the internet about apps that probably some of the guys here in the audience or elsewhere in the world have been building just using Liferay's APIs, web services. Now here is the thing. To do this, you need to know Liferay kind of well, right? So if you probably have an investment on Liferay, you've learned it, probably because you wanted to build sites or you wanted to build portals, and you know it has this web services API, then you say, oh, I can actually use this for my app. I don't have to develop it from scratch, right? So we want to take this a whole new step further. We want to make Liferay attractive, even for people who have no idea about what Liferay is. What we are seeing is some of these people are actually going to other departments where they are developing the mobile apps. In some cases, it's not themselves. And telling, oh, Liferay is a very good option for this. And they say, what is Liferay? It's just a portal platform? Well, not anymore, right? So we wanted to introduce in this event, Liferay Screens. Liferay Screens is a new product that we've built, actually in just 4 months, it's in beta yet, that has the goal of creating native apps, although not only native apps, but for now native apps, backed by Liferay. And our goal was to make it as fast as possible to develop an app. So how long do you think it takes to build an app? And I'm including the backend here, of course. How much? Weeks? Days, yeah, wow. That's enough adventurous. You don't build so many apps, right? Well, I'm going to try to make a big bet here. I'm going to say that it takes 1 minute. And I'm going to show it, right? So this is a video of Liferay screens in action. This is Xcode, for those of you who don't know it. It's the SDK that Apple provides. Here, I'm just dragging and dropping a controller, and then I'm using one of the screenlets, that's how we call them, which is a login screen. Now, I'm creating there a second view, a second screen, and again, I'm going to drag and drop a view, that's the way Apple calls the widgets, and I'm going to configure one screenlet there. In this case, it's a form that is backed by DDL, which probably many of you already know. And now I'm going to write a little bit of code, which is actually very simple. It's like 6 lines of code, which basically say, when you click sign in, if it's successful, go to the second view. That's all the code says. Okay? So I have my 2 views. I connect the data with this view, so that when the user enters the email address and password, we can actually read it. And I check that everything is OK, still under 1 minute, and I just execute the app. And now we're going to see it in an emulator. Basically, this app has a real login. So you can see I can log in with test@liferay.com, which is the default user of Liferay. I log in, and I'm forwarded to a form that is dynamically generated, that has many of the features you are used in the web, such as validation, specifying the options, and I can just submit it. This is a working app, and I can go to Liferay. In this case, it's just used as a back office for administrators, and I can see the answer. Or I can go to the definitions, and you can see here the form that the user has just filled, and change it in any way, and it's going to be immediately changed in the app. So, thank you. Yeah. So this is obviously a simple application, right? I only had 1 minute. It's not like I had 20 minutes or so, right? But it is still a real application in the sense that you can actually do something useful with this. You can actually, for example, develop an app that you send to customers where they can give you their opinion on something, or to your employees to see how the morale is doing, right? So it's actually a useful app. And obviously, not all apps will be like this. You guys who have been developing apps or anything else, you know that the customers will always want something that is not provided out of the box. Actually, as much as they can, they will ask for that. But we think there are actually many reusable components that can speed up a lot the development. So to dig a little bit deeper on what Screens is, it provides screenlets, which you can think of them as something kind of similar to portlets, but for developers. It's 100% themable. Any of these screenlets, you can change them any way you want in terms of the look and feel, or even in adding functionality. It's compatible with iOS and Android SDKs. For us, that was very, very important, because we don't want you guys to have to choose, do I use the native, or do you use the official SDK, or do we use what Liferay provides? I mean, most probably you would wait. But if it's just for free, you just import the library into Xcode or Android Studio, then why not try it? And of course, it's open source, completely open source. And even if we haven't announced it yet, we're already having contributions, which is great. Thanks a lot, guys. I wanted to use this presentation also so that you guys start meeting some of the guys behind these technologies. So I don't know if Juan and Jose are around. Can you guys stand up if you're around? Juan, I've seen you. There they are. So if you see these guys, even before they do their talk, go talk to them and say, wow, we love the screens. Or say, nah, don't buy it. That's still good feedback, right? OK, so that's definitely much better than having to develop a backend from scratch and so on. And you're already developing mobile apps. But is it just really for mobile phones? I mean, Apple just announced the iWatch that people have been rumored for years. And now it's the cool thing. I mean, some of you, I've been seeing you. You have one of these watches. And not only that, I mean, we're more than ever talking about the Internet of Things, about how everything is going to be connected. You're going to have screens everywhere. So we really think screens is going to fit really great here. Okay? And actually, Bruno Faras, where is Bruno? Are you around? There he is. Bruno Faras. He's going to do a demo of an application built for a watch. So don't miss that one. Okay, so let's leave mobile behind. The web is not waiting behind. Okay, the web has really evolved a lot in the last few years. Probably the initial reason for this is that the browsers, maybe headed by Chrome, which really changed things a lot, are much better now, right? When you use a browser now, you feel much better, right? An i6, it seems it's finally died. I mean, I don't know, I keep an eye on it just in case, but it seems it's died. And one of the really good things that I think sometimes we underestimate is that we have no idea what version of these browsers we have. Nobody does anymore, which is a very good thing, right? Well, some people know what version of Internet Explorer, but hopefully that's going to be going away. And the reason why that's a big thing is because now standards are actually delivered, are actually usable much sooner. Let me give you an example, web components. What is the status of web components? We'll actually talk a little bit more about it in some sessions, but we cannot really use it as developers, right? And if we were 5-6 years ago, we'd say, okay, web components, well, by the time it becomes a standard, that's going to be 1-2 years. Then developers are going to develop it in, browser developers, 3 years. And then my customer is going to upgrade pretty soon, another 5 years. So I'm not going to use web components. But today, that's completely different. The web components specification, even before it's delivered, or it's finished, the browsers are implementing this. And when the browsers implement this, a few months later, everybody has that. And that changes the picture a lot. And probably because of this, there has been a big revolution in the technologies that back the web. And probably the biggest of those revolutions is the JavaScript revolution. Together with HTML5 and many powerful libraries. For example, yesterday at the conference, there was this session proposed about AngularJS and Liferay, and there was a big interest, but it's not the only one. Really, JavaScript is become a much more powerful platform on the browser, and not only on the browser, also on the backend, as you guys know, with Node.js, that it's ever been, right? And because more and more developers are working on this, especially new developers, then the development flow has also improved a lot with tools such as Grunt or more recently Gulp or NPM. There is a much faster way of developing these web apps. And actually, Zino Rocha, where is Zino? Zino? Maybe he's still sleeping, long night. So if you see Zino, he's actually going to do an amazing talk about all of these new web development technologies and how they fit with Liferay. But I want to give you a preview of that, something that we'll be presenting in more detail, which is sometimes those of you who are front-end developers feel like all this revolution is going past you. Like in a portal environment, you feel like kind of constrained, right? So we want you to start thinking in portlets, but also beyond portlets. So portlets are actually a great thing. They're a great thing, especially for site administrators. For a site administrator, it's actually a dream come true, which is I have this page, and I can just drag and drop these portlets, which can be super powerful, and I just combine them in any way I want. I'm super happy with it, right? But for the front-end developer, sometimes they become a pain. They become a pain because in order to allow for that flexibility for the site administrator, you have to impose a lot of limitations. And those limitations mean that it's not that easy at all to leverage all this revolution of JavaScript, HTML, CSS libraries, right? So they are great as widgets. And when you want widgets, then you're willing to pay the cost of those limitations. But sometimes you don't really need widgets, right? So we want to support a new type of apps that are built on top of Liferay. The first type would be what we are calling full-page apps. Full-page apps are not so much different than portlets. Actually, what we have in mind is that you can even use the portlet technology to develop them. But the key difference is that they are designed from scratch to own the whole page. Like a developer would say, when this is deployed to Liferay, this app takes the whole page. I'm not a widget. And because I'm not a widget, I don't have to care about conflicting with other widgets in the page. So I'm free to use many more CSS frameworks, JavaScript, JavaScript libraries, whatever I want. So this is a very small change, but technology-wise, but a big change in terms of the implications. But we don't want to stop there. A step further is what we are calling standalone apps, and Eduardo Lundgren will be showing an application or a session describing it in much more detail. But take this example. This app is actually a sample app that Eduardo and Sino developed for Senna. Senna is a new JavaScript library to develop single-page applications. And they developed this just using HTML and JavaScript. It doesn't have any backend, actually. Now, what we want is to be able to take this type of apps, which are basically just front-end apps, and be able to back them by Liferay once they need to have more dynamic content or identity management, login to simplify, or any of the other features such as comments that Liferay can provide. So actually, this is not something that we're inventing. Let's be honest about that. This exact same concept already built by actually one of you. Is anyone here who worked on this application? There you are. Big applause to these guys. It's an amazing app. It's built with AngularJS, one of the JavaScript libraries that I showed before. And it's actually an intranet for a health organization. And here it's one of the UIs that is being used by a person with disability. And it's built with this same concept that I'm talking about, of a standalone app that is actually backed by Liferay. And we really want to make it much, much easier to do that. So in terms of web development, our idea is to build this, what we are calling for now, Liferay Core.js, which is a JavaScript library, which makes it much, much easier to use remote APIs, including using some of the newer protocols, such as HTTP2 and WebSockets. We are supporting this concept of full-page apps, which in this case use the local APIs. And of course, what I introduced before, native apps for mobile devices, for wearables, for the Internet of Things. That's the new vision for Liferay as a platform that can be reused for all of this. And Eduardo Lundgren, oh, he's over there. Eduardo Lundgren will be talking much more about some of the big things he's doing to facilitate much more to build this type of apps backed by Liferay. So with this new vision of Liferay being much more versatile, one of the great benefits is you can actually start using any technology that you want to build these apps. Well, any of these technologies, for example, that are very popular in the Java world, that is kind of not prepared for portlets, you can use it. You can even start using Node.js, which front-end developers really love, and just communicate with Liferay using one of these JavaScript libraries that we are developing. And of course, suddenly, you're much more free to use any of the JavaScript libraries out there, right? And finally, as part of this, we really want to enable what is being called real-time applications. And real-time web applications, what it really means is that the user doesn't really have to interact with the app. The app actually is able to provide information without the user doing anything, either because it's an async call that he made, and then the server says, oh, I have the response now, or because the server is actually able to send a push notification saying, hey, I have something that you might find interesting. And you're going to see a very cool demo of that in one of the sessions. I think the one by Bruno for us. And we're actually working on the backend as well. Actually, here we have two of our best engineers, Ilian Peitsev and Igor Spasik, working on the front end and backend respectively, integrating Servlet 3.1 or 3.0 to be able to implement these push notifications along with a JavaScript library, Socket.io, which allows leveraging new protocols such as WebSockets, taking care of graceful degradation for you. OK, so now we can develop much more on top of Liferay. But you're probably thinking, OK, yeah, but Liferay is not perfect, right? I mean, if we start doing all of this, then there are some things that probably Liferay would need to improve on. And we agree, actually, right? And one of the big investments that we've been doing over the past few years, and now more than ever, is invest on this concept of fine-grained modularity and extensibility. I've been talking about how you can do modular development on top of Liferay for many years. Not anymore, I don't do that so much anymore, but I used to go to customers who actually had built this big website, big portal, or big intranet, and it was just a super big monolithic application, and actually, more often than not, some of the developers have left, and then the thing was falling down every day. And they didn't know what to do, because it was one monolithic piece. And I was telling, oh, with Liferay, that's much better, because you have this core platform, and what you develop on top is just plugins, portlets. If one doesn't work well, or the developer leaves, you can, in the worst case, just remove that one and develop it from scratch, right? It allows for modular development. And Liferay is very extensible, guys. You know it. I mean, probably all of you have done extensions to Liferay, or have asked someone to do extensions for Liferay. But we want to do much better. Because if we were telling customers, don't develop something like very monolithic, just develop plugins on top of Liferay, the truth is, Liferay is very monolithic itself, right? So we have several goals here. And one of the goals is we want to enable developers around the world to use just the pieces of Liferay that they really need. If you are building an app, and you actually want to use user management, or you want to use comments, or you want to use identity management, but you don't want to use anything else, we want Liferay to be a good platform for that too. Just use those parts, OK? So if you can think of Liferay as this, right? Not that we like to think of it like that, but yeah, we do when we want to break it, right? So this is actually a new vision of this backend that can be reused for all these type of apps. And there are many benefits to this. Actually, people have been asking us to extract out certain things from the core for a very long time. But there is a problem with it. So let's imagine we have blocks in the core. Not everybody's using blocks, obviously. So people were saying, I want to be able to get rid of blocks. So why don't you make it a plugin? The thing is, if you make it a plugin, you start having quite a few drawbacks. For example, it's not that easy to reuse the services of blocks. Of course, there are some ways, and actually has thousands of lines of code to allow you to invoke services, but it's kind of limited because of the limitations of Java EE. Not only that, it's not that easy to make plugins extensible, right? Java EE, again, doesn't really provide anything. But for a few years now, thanks to the push of Ray.oj, we've been investing in this really cool technology and set of standards from the OSDI Alliance. And this is the new vision. This is what it really means for Liferay. Basically, we're breaking Liferay in these small pieces, and each of these small pieces have the dependencies declared. Like this small module depends on this other small module, and this other module depends on all this other small module. And the OSDI engine takes care of everything with that knowledge. It says, if you're going to deploy this, then you also need this other thing. And that other thing doesn't start, OK, then blocks doesn't start. It's not like you deploy it and then it blows on the face of the user, right? We never want that. Also, OSDI provides a very elegant, and I'm going to show you an example, of extension points. Any of these modules can have one or many extension points with very little effort from the developer. You can even scale individual modules separately. You have much better working hot deployment, because there is much more meta information for the OSDI engine to be able to know when a module has to start and what it needs and so on. And it actually allows for a new style of development, which the OSDI people have been calling microservices, which is now reused for something similar, but not quite the same. But basically, it allows you to build very small modules, because there is no cost as it used to be the case with just Java EE by itself, in just having many modules. It's very beautiful. So with this, it becomes possible to just remove what you don't need. And removing what you don't need is just as easy as writing a command line command telling the OSI engine to stop them, or even just remove the jar files. Don't even deploy all those other jar files, because each of these boxes is just a jar file. Right? And suddenly, Liferay can be as lightweight or as heavyweight as your specific need at that time. It's really beautiful. And so that you see some code of what this means, this is more or less, it's slightly simplified what it means to declare dependencies, right? Dependencies are based on packages. So from any module, you can say, I'm going to use these other packages, and I need some other module to provide an implementation for those packages. Actually, there is this super cool tool called BND, who can actually look at your code, see the packages that you're importing that are not in the module itself, and generates this for you. And then, as one of those modules, you can also export packages, saying, I'm allowing other modules to use this package, or I'm providing an implementation for this package if there is any other module who wants to use it, right? And this simple idea fixes very elegantly the class loading hell that we've all been living in the Java world, in a very, very elegant way. So Miguel and Ray, I think they are over there. They've been the ones pushing for it. Ray has been saying, we need to do this, we need to modularize for a long time. And actually, we've all believed him, because he's super smart and we respect him. But as we are digging into it, we're getting very, very excited with the possibilities that this has for us and for all Liferay developers. It's really exciting. A second goal is extensibility built to last. Liferay is very, very extensible, right? But sometimes when you have to upgrade to a new version, it's a high cost, or at least you're not sure, right? So we're doing, also based on these OSI standards, a set of improvements to make extensibility easier to understand and easier to maintain over time. So this is the typical way of using an extension point at Liferay, right? There is this property in portal.properties, which you can declare, for example, from a hook. Autologin is one of the most used ones. But this is a very Liferay-specific way. We actually have quite a few lines of code for each of these extension points, which means, and then in the portal properties. How many of you have seen the portal properties? It's very short, right? You were actually looking for more and more properties there, right? Everybody asks for that. Liferay has a standard way of doing this that it's much more elegant, right? Basically, this is the exact same equivalent. So using just one annotation, which is component, this is a very simple way of using it. It actually has properties. Because that class implements autologin, OSI is going to do all the magic for you. So basically, it's going to say, OK, this is registering an implementation of autologin. And in this case, Liferay is going to say, hey, what are the implementations of autologin out there? Not only that, but it can be dynamic for free. By dynamic, I mean you can actually deploy it on the fly, remove it on the fly. And Liferay code will be notified. Let me show you an example of something that you can actually do in your own plugins, right? So imagine you want to do a class called my menu class, right? And you want to say, I have a way of rendering it, the menu, but I actually want to provide the capability for others to provide renderers, ways to render that. Maybe one is in HTML, the other one is in any other language. So all I have to do is create this method, set menu renderer, and declare it as a reference. And if I declare it as a reference, basically OSI, in this case, when it starts up, is going to say, hey, this other module has an implementation of this for you, just call set. Forget about anything else. Forget about when do I grab it, do I cache it or not. It's going to do everything for you. Let me show you so that it doesn't seem that it only supports the very simple cases. A slightly more complicated case in which you actually want, in this case, to add another extension point, which is menu item implementations. But you want to support many menu items, obviously, right? And basically, all we have to do is pass a property, cardinality, multiple, and then a policy. This is really, really powerful, which is say this is dynamic, which means that at any point, without restarting the server at all, if there is any new implementation, just let me know. Okay? In this case, it's a slightly simplified example, because if you want to support dynamic, you also have to say, okay, in case it is deployed, but then it's removed, call this other method, which can be said like remove menu item or something like that, right? But it's really, really simple, and it's all handled in a standard way. All extension points, the goal is to be like this. So any custom class can be made extensible. And actually, one of the big announcements we have in this event is a new tool called audience targeting, right? I'm not going to talk a lot about it in terms of what it does, but I'm going to talk about the technical aspects of it. Because audience targeting is for Liferay 6.2, but it's already using all of these things that I'm telling you about. It's one app in the marketplace, but under the hood, there is more than 30 modules. More than 30 modules communicating with each other, and as a result of that, it's highly extensible. There are several extension points that, even if it's an app of the marketplace, even if it's a plugin, any of you can actually provide extensions to it. It's really, really beautiful. And these are the guys, Julio, Eduardo, Eudaldo. Are you guys around here? Where are they? Oh, there they are. Okay. Really amazing piece of technology. So the last point is one of the most, or the least maintainable pieces of extension or extensions that you can do for Liferay is UI extensions. So we are actually leveraging this and adding on top of this to allow more granularity and maintainability. So we actually had a very interesting discussion at the conference yesterday, and Carlos Sierra is going to have a talk that you should probably not miss. If you've ever overridden a JSP to change the UI of Liferay, and then you have had to maintain it over and over and over with every version, with every patch, etc. So we're really looking for your feedback on this one, because I think we can improve the status of extension of UI for Liferay a lot. The last topic related to modularity is APIs. And not only APIs, but using efficient protocols, as I mentioned before, like WebSockets and HTTP2. And a big thing here that I wanted to mention is semantic versioning. How many of you know what semantic versioning is? Like, very few people still know what it is. But basically, in the software world, anyone versions their stuff any way they want. Like, should we call this 2.3 or 3.0, right? Or if you are Sun or Oracle, you know that from 1.4, you always go to 5.0, right? It's the way numbers go, right? But what that means is as a developer, you have no idea whether your library that is using an API from that other library is compatible. That's horrible, right? Especially in this new world in which you want to have dependencies. Wouldn't it be awesome if just looking at the version, it would be possible to know whether it's compatible or not? That's exactly what semantic versioning is about. It's a standard and a set of tools to allow for that. And we are adopting this at Liferay. So one of the clear benefits is when you build an app on Liferay, you no longer will build an app that is tied to Liferay 7. Instead, if you're using the user management and the user service, then your app might be tied to version 1.2.3 of user services. And what that means is you are actually compatible with all the 1.2 anything. Because semantic versioning tooling is going to guarantee that all of those are backwards compatible, right? So it's very beautiful. And I actually, when I learned about this, I felt like this. So this is a picture of me, actually, in the beach. We also want to enable you to do more by working less. This is a real example of a very simple module that we have, which is Amazon Rankings, a very small portlet that we are using as an example. This is an interface, a real Java interface with some annotations. And this is actually declaring the configuration options of that module. Yes, that single class, few lines of code, and then, from this, something really cool that Ray and Kamesh from India are working on is automatically generating this. Just by doing that class, you have this nice UI automatically generated with you using our DDM backend, our dynamic data mapping backend. And if you have a class that you want the configuration that has been set here, very simple. You just have this activate method. This is a draft API, so it's not exactly what you can use yet, but very soon. And just say, hey, give me the configuration. Whenever it changes, give it to me. So no longer need to go read it from database, read it from a file. You don't care what you're grabbing it for. And whenever it changes, it's going to call that setter method. So it's going to improve performance, and obviously it's much, much less code. Really beautiful. State-of-the-art development tooling. One of the big mindset changes that we're doing is, for a long time, while we're using some standard tools, such as, let's say, Ant, we're actually developing a lot of Liferay specific on top of it, right? So we've changed the mindset, and actually people like Sino, Eduardo, Ray have been pushing for this a lot, to be able to use the best of breed development tooling and invest on them. People like Greg Emerson, they've been contributing to BND, or Carlos Sierra, they've been contributing to Arquillian, so that these tools support Liferay natively. So when you invest on learning how to develop for Liferay, you're actually investing on state-of-the-art Java development, or even JavaScript development with things like Gulp. And the other way around, it will be much easier to find people who can develop for Liferay. Right? So, to summarize, it's actually a very exciting time to be a Liferay developer. Now you can reuse your knowledge to do much more than ever. Not only portals, not only websites, not only portlets, but actually any type of mobile application, or any type of independent application. So all of these things can be built on top of this modular platform. So I don't know if you guys, but I think this is really exciting, and it's going to be make a big change. Not only because of the possibilities, but because the way this has been done is the Liferay way. It's open source. It's following standards everywhere, and it's using the state-of-the-art tools. So I wanted to finish by saying, don't stand still. If you like this, get involved. You can develop apps with screens starting today after you go to the workshop. You can start using the new development tools that we're going to be showing in the next few days. And you can already try out the Liferay 7 milestone, so you have no excuse. And since you're here, go and meet these guys. Talk to them. Don't be shy. Don't be an introvert. Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy DEVCON.